Welcome to the Caregiver Relief Podcast, where we help caregivers navigate the challenges of caregiving with knowledge, compassion, and support. I'm your host, Diane Carbo, RN, and today's episode is one that will really, truly touch your heart. We're joined by Rachel Kerr Schneider, author of The Widow Wore Red, who shares her powerful story of caring for her husband through ALS, navigating widowhood at 49, and helping their children through grief. This is a conversation about love, loss, faith, and the strength it takes to rebuild your life when everything changes. This episode is sponsored by myvitalvault.net, your all-in-one life organizer for aging adults and caregivers. It's designed to help you securely store your essential legal, medical, and emergency information in one easy-to-access place. Because when a crisis hits, being prepared can make all the difference. Join our Caregiver Relief community, a warm, welcoming space where you can connect with other caregivers, ask questions, share stories, and find support from people who truly understand. Visit community.caregiverrelief.com to join now, because caregiving is one of the hardest and most meaningful things you'll ever do, and no one should have to do it alone. And if this episode speaks to you, please take a moment to like, share, or comment. Every click helps us reach more caregivers who need encouragement, resources, and hope. Rachel, thank you so much for joining us today. You have a very powerful and personal story. And by the way, I love The Widow Chose Red.
Thank you, Diane, and thank you for the invitation. It's an honor and a privilege to join you for a few moments today.
Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and what led you to write The Widow Wore Red?
So I will tell you that basically I knew while I was living this that I was going to have to get this story down on paper. I knew that God had put me in this place and in this situation because there was a message that he wanted to get out. And while I was living it, I knew I was going to be writing about it and talking about it one day, because what I found for me is that, number one, I didn't know a thing about ALS. I'd never heard of it. And that is still not unusual because it is a somewhat still of a rare disease. Only about 30,000 people are living with it at any given time in the United States, and there are only about 5,000 people that are diagnosed every year. But the really terrible thing about it is all of those people are terminal. They will die. There is a 3 to 5 year window. They literally tell you to go home, get your things in order, and they still have no known cause, and there is no known cure. So it is a disease that of slow progression. You being a nurse know this. It just slowly paralyzes the body because the motor neurons are dying, and yet the brain stays fully intact. And so they believe now, or there are some scientists that believe that because it is a neurodegenerative disease, that there are commonalities with Parkinson's and Huntington's and Alzheimer's, and that if they can unlock the key for maybe one of these, that it will help it to maybe unlock the key. Exactly. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
I have to ask, is there a genetic predisposition for this?
There are two types of ALS. One is sporadic, which is just like John's was, it just out of the clear blue, no family history. And then there is another one that is familial, where you can trace people and people can carry the gene and yet not get the disease. But yeah, it's brutal. I wouldn't wish it on my worst neighbor. And I didn't know the first thing about it. It's only been around for about 175 years, that we've come to know about it like we do now.
I've worked with patients with ALS, and the impact it has on both the patient themselves and their families is heartbreaking.
And I think too, Diane, and you're probably very much aware of the fact that the mental health component, you think
Oh,
about delivering a terminal, and there's nothing, there's no, you could maybe get in a trial, but the chances are very small. And at least when they tell you've got a cancer or something, they have something they can try, right? For
yeah.
the most
For
part.
the most part,
For the
yeah.
most part, unless you're at a stage 4 and you
Yeah.
just found it, usually they'll try something. There is
Yeah.
literally nothing. And that is, I think, the part that is so hard for your rational mind. We live in the United States of America.
Yeah.
Anything is possible in America,
Yeah.
right?
Yes. Yeah.
So it really does cause you to go, wait a second. But I wrote the story. This is the first in a trilogy. So this is the first part, the story about John and I and his illness and his death. And then the second book, which is coming out around Father's Day, is under the same umbrella of The Widow Chose Red, The Boys, the Bible, and the Battles. And it'll chronicle the story of how I raised the boys at 10 and 14, how the oldest went down the lane of addiction, how we fought that and dealt with that. And then the third book will come out next year, and that will tell how I met a widower who lost his wife to breast cancer 6 months after John died, left him with 4 young girls, and we dated long distance for 10 years while we got all these kids grown up. And 3 years ago, we took them all to Israel and got married at the Sea of Galilee. And that,
Oh, how
yeah,
beautiful.
that will be called God, the Guy, and the Girls.
Awesome. Oh, you just gave me goosebumps.
Oh, there's a lot to this. There's a lot to all of this,
Yes.
Diane. And I really just wanted to, because I really just wanted to give each part of the story the attention that it needed.
Yes.
And the boys and the addiction, the boys actually have contributed to this second book. So
Mhm.
it's so important too to get their perspective. And I actually just left an event a couple of weeks ago, Diane, where they were talking about you mentioned before we started the broadcast about you being a caregiver at a very young age.
Yeah.
There are approximately 5.4 million young people,
Yes.
children,
Yes.
who are giving care.
Yes.
And it is like they are like a forgotten segment of society.
100%.
Yeah.
Yes. That, and in fact, I'm doing a podcast with a woman who owns a home care agency, and we're going to have that discussion on how it's impacted our lives
Yes.
because and young caregivers are so ignored, and they need as much, if not more help than the spousal caregiver or the family caregiver.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and they're afraid to tell their friends, they're
Yep.
afraid to tell their
Yep.
teachers
Yep.
if they have to miss class because they had
Yep.
to take them to the whatever it is, they live in fear and they're carrying this burden, and most of society is not even aware of it.
Yes. My mom came diagnosed with lung cancer, never smoked a day in her life.
So s
And I was junior, senior in high school. And in my senior year of high school, and I went to a small Catholic school, so I'm this good kid. Ha ha ha. I skipped out of school every day at lunchtime, just made sure that they knew I was there. I'd already been accepted to nursing school and stuff, and went home to help my mom. I would literally walk home because I didn't
Yeah.
have a car, and it was about 5 miles, and I
Oh,
would walk along the highway every day to get home so that I could help her with the daily chores that she needed to get done. So I understand what kids go through and what a challenge it is. But I wanna talk to you now. How did your role as a wife change as you became a caregiver?
it's a slow process, but it's steady, right? And
Yes,
and
it is.
and feel the changes because they are real.
Yes.
And I think I told you, I never thought of myself as a caregiver. And like you said, most people, by the time you become one, there's no preparation. You're usually just thrown into it, right?
You are thrown into it, and most people don't see that, like you're saying, it's a slow, steady process. You start doing things like maybe grocery shopping for somebody, your family member, or taking them to the doctors once in a while, but you're not going in. There's so many things, and with you, you go from being your lover, your partner in life, or your partner in crime even sometimes, and you're a parent to 2 children, and slowly but surely over time, that evolves into you're the caregiver, and it's hard for many people to make that change, and you did it at such an early age.
I feel like yes, because most of us are thinking we're gonna do this with our parents when they get older.
Yep.
We're used to doing it with our children when they're younger,
Yeah.
but you really don't ever think about when you walk down the aisle that you're going to be maybe when you're older, right? But
Yeah.
not in your mid-40s, and that is still I know a lot of people think that's old, but that's still relatively young
Yeah.
in the course of your life,
Yeah.
and I think too, it's especially difficult when the husband who's
Yeah.
used to being the provider, who's
Yeah.
used to being the one to go out and work and all of that,
Yeah.
and not all and his body is physically deteriorating. I mean,
Yeah.
and to have to depend on anyone else, and especially maybe even your wife, and yes, the person you've been so intimate with
Yeah.
and the person that you've shared and built all of these hopes and dreams, and then to go, "Wait a second." And my husband, I will tell you, he knew. He was like, "You're gonna take care of me," and I can remember times he'd look at me, his speech wasn't good, and look at me like, "You're gonna" I go, "Okay, come on, I'm gonna move you from the bed to the wheelchair," and I could see
Uh-huh.
his eyes rolling, or, oh my gosh, the lift, I
Yeah.
can't re the Hoyer lift.
The Hoyer lift.
Oh,
The god
Diane,
awful
I'm
Hoyer
survi
lift.
I did it once. He
Uh-huh.
was spinning around the room, it was like an episode of Lucy and Desi, and
Oh god.
I was just like, "Okay, I'm gonna get you down, I promise," and when I finally did, he just his I said, "Alright, I'll never do it again, I promise, I'll never do it."
Oh, you know what? We put so much pressure on the family caregiver to perform services and procedures and care once expected only by to be done by healthcare professionals.
Yes.
And all of a sudden, and I can see I've had men become husbands. I've witnessed them when they're being cared for. They're angry
Oh, yeah.
because they can't do what they want. They're dealing with their ego, their manhood, the not being able to be the provider anymore. And they're angry that and who do they take it out on? I've seen this a million times. The person that they love most and depend on most. And it's really hard to deal with.
Yeah, you are absolutely right. And, we all have our good days and we all have our not so good days. And yet, there is so much emotion that's tied up with this whole caregiving journey. And then it's not just how the caregiving decisions you've got, then, like you said, this equipment,
Yeah.
they're wheeling it in, they're telling me how to operate it. They're, a feeding tube and and you're like, okay, wait a second.
Yeah.
I need a minute or 2 to figure
Yes.
this out, and you always feel like there's just something else you've gotta learn how to do,
It's
and
more coming at you every single day. Yes.
yes,
Yes.
yeah, and sometimes I mean, and then just even like, "Okay, and we want you to know, Rachel, if the power goes out, you're on a list so that they know that you have equipment in the house that is important to sustain life." I'm like, "Well, I never even thought about that. I never thought
Yeah.
about that.
Yeah.
Seriously?"
You know what? I want you to know, Rachel, that we are in a public health crisis right now,
Mm,
and it's only going to get worse. Our Medicare reimbursement has it delays care, it denies care, and we've gone to a cost sharing platform so that you will have to pay more for the care and services that you are recommended that you have done. And what's happening is the hospitals are discharging people way too so unsafe discharges to home is on an increase. And what's happening is, things roll downhill.
mm.
And they've also cut reimbursement for home care. The and the nurses are not being reimbursed to go out to provide support for the family caregiver. So what I am seeing is family caregivers are expected to do more and more, and now they're moving hospital into the home, and they're saying how much it's going to save so much money. Guess what? It's not going to save the life of the family caregiver because Right now, 63% of the family caregivers out there, Rachel, become seriously ill with chronic illness or die before the person they're caring for. The pressure is overwhelming, and it's only going to get worse because as they're looking to cut care, I had a son, he was in the military and he became very ill, and I dealt with the military medical delivery system, and you often hear the veterans or even the active soldiers say it's delay, deny, and wait to die. And that's
Mm.
what we're dealing with now. Situation and what you're talking about is such an important and powerful message for our caregivers out there because they know that you need to let them know that they can survive. It's going to be challenging, but they can. Now, you made a very difficult decision to wait before telling your sons about the diagnosis. And that surprised me. And so I want to learn why you did that.
So there were a couple of reasons why. First and foremost, John was not that symptomatic.
Yeah.
ALS is very slowly progressing.
Yeah.
He just, his first sign was a dropped foot. So unless you were really watching him walk, you didn't know.
Yeah.
So he looked fine. He was diagnosed in November of '08, and it wasn't until the following summer that we told the boys. Part of that, too, Diane, was I had family who lived in another part of the world. So I
Mhm.
was able to share with them and not worry about them interacting with anybody in the
Yes.
community, right?
Yeah.
And then John's parents divorced, but were on the West Coast. So we could share with them at Christmas. Here's the thing: good news travels fast, bad news travels even faster.
Yes, it does.
And
Yes.
so we knew that when we shared it with the boys, it was going out into our community. And we knew
A
that
wise
it was going
choice.
to be a shock.
Yes.
And John and I just needed a little more time.
Yeah.
And so it wasn't until that following summer that John was getting a little, it was getting harder for him to
Yeah.
button or to hold things. And so finally the kids, the boys realized something was up with dad. So that's when we sat them down, and literally within 10 minutes of them leaving the sofa, my phone started blowing up and John's did too. Like
Yes.
Sam's. And so I just think we needed to fortify ourselves because there was an onslaught, an outpouring of support. And yet we found ourselves trying to comfort the neighbors, the people in the community, right? In our church. Is
I
it
get
shocked?
that.
Yeah.
Yes, and when people are supposed to be taking care of you and supporting you through this journey, they're coming to you for support. And I have to tell you, my mom had cancer, lung cancer. My dad did not talk about it. We weren't allowed to talk about it at all. I had the caregiving role put on me because he needed to work. And he worked a lot of hours, probably intentionally, because he didn't want to have to deal with my caring for my mom.
Sure.
And I can tell you that my dad, he wouldn't even talk to my mom, and she intuitively knew that she had cancer, but she pretended like she didn't because my dad didn't want to deal with it. And I think that I applaud you and John for fortifying your relationship, your decisions, and how you were going to move forward before you told other people because it was a disaster. My dad, it negatively impacted our whole family in multiple ways because he couldn't talk about it. And grief is real. And even at a young age, how did the caregiving affect your children? And can you share what families understand about children in grief?
Well, here's what I do believe, Diane. I think they know
Uh-huh.
a lot more about it now than they did 15 years ago
Yeah.
when we went through it, or even when your family went through it.
Yep.
Much more aware of mental health. We're
Yep.
much more aware of trauma. We're
Yes.
much more aware of what it does to the body and
Yeah.
mentally, physically, and emotionally. I will tell you that. And here's the thing: I thought that if I just kind of soldiered on and held it all together. My boys were watching me, right? They're watching me. So
Uh-huh.
if mom's doing okay, we should be doing okay, right? And I
Yeah.
thought I was setting the right example, and in a lot of ways I was. They didn't see me cry a whole lot, they did see us
Yep.
pray, they saw me love on their dad, they helped as best they could. They
Yes.
weren't big, strong guys,
Yeah.
they were young tweens, but they would help
Yeah.
with dad and tuck him in and do the things, and what I know is that even though I raised these boys the same way, they both dealt with this trauma and this grief very differently. And
Absolutely.
I think my oldest son, I think he started acting out the minute that we told him. He realized that this was not going to end well.
Yeah.
And the youngest was so young that I don't think he really understood all. So I think that in looking back, I wish that I had been a little more attuned, but I didn't have anybody, Diane, who was going through this. I didn't
Yes.
even know
Yeah.
anybody who was taking care of their parents. When you're in your 40s, your parents are still kind of
Yep.
active with it for the most
Yep.
part.
Part.
Yeah, so I didn't have anybody that I could go to and go, "How do I, how do I do this?" Or and then after John died and I realized something was going on with John, getting the right kind of help,
Yeah.
and we know this even when you're a caregiver, getting the right kind of help for people to come into your home and help you when you
Yes.
get to that place,
Yeah.
it is a whole nother finding the right kind of help is a huge job. It's a huge job.
I will tell you that if you do get help in the home, and it takes about 7 people before you get to the person that meshes with you, your beliefs, your values, that you feel comfortable with providing care. It's very hard, very hard.
Yeah, and I think too and then there's you learn the differences between skilled care and unskilled care,
Yes. Yes.
and then I was trying to find coverage to help me at night, right? Because I
Yeah.
needed to be awake during the day, and Diane, I thought I'd never sleep through the night again
Yep.
because I never thought I ever
I get
would,
it.
and then you've got people in your house overnight, you don't know if they're staying up all they could be sleeping at the
Yes.
dining room table. You
Yeah.
don't know, and
Yeah.
then I remember one night, John rang the bell. There was a bell on his bed, and I had somebody there, and he looked at me when she was in the room, and he just gave me a look that was just like, I knew she wasn't treating him well.
Yeah.
She was talking to him negatively, all those things. And the next day, I'm like, okay, she's done. So,
Yeah.
to your point, and I don't think because we live in such a have it now, get it now world. People
Yeah.
don't think they think, "Oh, I'm gonna make one care to home health care. I'm gonna have the perfect
Nope.
person, and it's
Nope.
all gonna happen. I'm gonna get them at the right price, at the right time, at the right
Yep.
personality," and they don't realize what it takes to make that happen.
Well, we also have another public health crisis. We have, for the first time in history, more seniors than youth. So the low birth rates from every generation after the baby boomers has not replaced themselves in numbers.
Wow.
And we are really in a serious crisis. And the healthcare system has paid and treated those that you need to come to the home and sit so badly that most of them have left. So for the next I will tell you right now, our generation will be the first generation that doesn't have anybody to take care of them, and every generation after is going to suffer because of it. We need to have more babies, we need to have families, we need to have things, and it's not happening. I know people are rolling their eyes saying, "Oh gosh," but solo agers and childless couples are really gonna struggle to find care. They really are if they don't have a family caregiver. And I'm doing a whole series on seniors and technology. Caregiver robots are here. And
Yes.
yep, yep. I want to talk a little bit about your faith. You
Yeah.
know, you include Jesus in your journey, and how did your faith evolve during caregiving and after your husband's passing even?
So I will tell you, Diane, I grew up in a very faith-filled family. My parents were both from two very different faith backgrounds.
Mhm.
So let me tell you, I got it from all sides. I got legal, I got grace, I got liturgy, I got hymns, I got it all the time. And I just really thank my parents for doing such a good job of pouring the word in me, which they did a great job. And my parents are still alive. They're 88 years old and they're in Australia, Melbourne, Australia.
Oh my.
Still living independently, thank you, Lord. But I will tell you that the shifts came for me. So I always knew who Jesus was, the Holy Spirit, God the Father. I knew all of that, but I knew it within the context of religion.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
what I am about now and what I know Jesus wants for us is relationship. He just wants our heart. And relationship happens through spending time with someone. And for me, I found that Jesus was in the room with me. Jesus was at the kitchen counter with me. Jesus was with me everywhere. And I was talking to him all the time because as a caregiver, I think we're walking on eggshells, even with the people we love the most,
Absolutely.
right? Because we
Yeah.
don't want them to think we're mad. We're not mad at them.
Yeah.
We're upset with the situation we're in, but it's not their fault.
Yes.
They didn't get sick on purpose. So it was really important for me to be able to let all of that, give it all to Jesus and just say, okay, because I don't want to give it to John, although I know sometimes I will. But ultimately, Lord, I got to trust that you are going to fortify me to get through this. And so I think for me, if I didn't have that faith, Diane, I dare say I would have been able to manage like I did because I knew who was in charge. But I will tell you, I did seek out a faith-based therapist. All right. I'm a gal of action. Some
Yeah.
people are more thinkers, others are more
Yeah.
feelers. I'm an action oriented. So I thought, okay, I've never helped anybody die before. I don't know how to do this. And
Right.
I'm going to be left standing when John is gone. So I need some strategies. I need some help. So I found a gal. And I remember one day I walked into her office and my last nerve was shot. I mean, done. And I said to her, I go, I don't understand. I'm not sleeping. I'm cranky. I'm irritated. I'm not eating. I go, and I got faith. I've got faith. Shouldn't this be easier? I know that God's in control. Shouldn't this be easier? And she looked over at me and she goes, Rachel, she goes, Jesus was a man. And I said, yes. And she said, Jesus had 12 guys helping him. And
Oh, all the men. Yeah, the
I,
good old boy
The
network.
good old boy network, but they were there. They were there.
Yeah.
Okay, Diane. And here's the thing. And then I thought about it for a minute. She said, maybe you need some help. And I said, okay. But I dialed back for a minute. I go, Jesus was the Son of God. He didn't need those guys, did he, Diane? He didn't have to have them
Yeah.
around.
Yeah.
He went and chose them. He
Yeah.
chose them specifically so that he could equip them for a job to do when he knew he wasn't going to be around to do it.
Yeah.
And do we think those disciples were helpful all the time? No.
I'm gonna have to say no because they were men and being bad.
No, they were wondering, okay, can I sit by your right? Who's going to sit at your
Yeah.
right and your
Yeah.
left?
Yeah.
I mean, they were supportive, but not necessarily helpful sometimes.
Absolutely.
I think that giving that context to it, I was like, wow, our capacity is one of those things. And Lord knows Jesus had infinite capacity. We don't.
Yeah.
And yet we keep adding that one more thing
Yes.
until we get to the place and then we know why we've collapsed
Yeah.
because that one more thing at that one particular time absolutely put us over the edge. And sometimes to the point of no return. And so being able to be aware of that, of our own capacity, I think is one of the things that I'm much more aware of it now, but I think it's only because of what I went through
Yes.
so much earlier in my life.
Rachel, that's a really important point I want to reiterate is that we push ourselves beyond limits. And I did share with you before the podcast that I find what I'm finding in my decades of nursing is people of faith seem to handle their caregiving journey, and so many of them are burdened with so much more than you would even imagine better than those that aren't people, don't have faith or belief in a higher power. And you made a comment, you read a quote to me. Do you still have that?
I do, I do. It said, faith doesn't remove exhaustion, but it gives us the ability to endure.
You know what? And I find that to be true. So I really appreciated that because it's something that I have discovered and I find that it's helpful because caregivers feel like they're a failure if they reach out to anybody. And I think that many of them with faith at least have their religion and their beliefs to hold them together in the darkest of times.
Absolutely. And I can remember even, Diane, we stepped outside of the country to do a stem cell treatment that at the time was not legal here in the United
Yeah,
States. Stem cells now, you can go around the corner, have them injected into
yep,
any part of your body. That's what
exactly.
15 years will do. And
Yeah.
I remember that doctor, we were in the Dominican Republic, and I remember he looked at us and he said, "You guys are people of faith, aren't you?" And I looked at him, I said, "Yes, we are." And he goes, "You're going to be okay."
Yeah.
Knowing full well what was still ahead of us. But to your point, I just think that it fortifies us in a way that just gives us what we need within that minute or that
Yeah,
day or that month or that year. But it does allow us to keep going. It doesn't mean anything's easy or it's perfect or it's right,
exactly.
but it does allow us to carry on.
I tell my listeners often that if you change your perspective, you change your life. And it's all about perspective. And if you can, sometimes you just have to look at your and say, I can't do this. I need help. And it doesn't mean you're a failure. In fact, you need help in order to continue your journey. I want you to know I lose about 2 to 3 caregivers every year. They can no longer do their caregiving, complete their journey of caregiving because they have become seriously ill or
Mm,
several have passed. So I really think that we need to focus on our own health. Everybody, self-care is a big word all of a sudden everywhere. I never heard that when I was growing up.
yeah,
Self-care,
exactly.
you're selfish. But
Exactly.
there is a point where we are putting so much on to those that provide care for their loved ones. They provide 1.1 trillion dollars in unpaid care a year.
Wow.
And now, with what's going on with the reimbursement rates, I am afraid for caregivers because it's not sustainable. We are pushing them beyond what is humanly possible, our healthcare system. And there's a group of us trying to make people aware and try to encourage healthcare reform.
Yeah.
When you hear delay, deny, and wait to die, it's very real.
Oh, without a doubt. And I think too that it's an unseen segment of our population.
Absolutely. The caregivers are invisible to everybody, and they are patients themselves because of what they're going through, and nobody's helping to provide care for them. And that's why we have to change that.
Exactly.
You talk about putting the eye back in spirit.
Too.
What does that mean for women, or especially caregivers?
Well, I like to say that it's a way of fortifying yourself, as you were just talking about. And I think you can't have spirit without I. You have to have yourself as a part of spirit. And that is that. For me, it's like it's referring back to that Holy Spirit, which was gifted to us when Jesus left this earth. And he left the Holy Spirit inside of us as a gift to act as a comforter and an advocate. And I like to think of it as that supernatural superpower that we all have, Diane. We don't have to, we hear enough about superheroes flying around in capes.
Yep.
We have this inside of us so that when we are lost and confused and so exhausted that we're not even sure we can take the next breath, we can call on that Holy Spirit that lives and breathes inside of us and say, okay, I'm not even sure what I need right now, but I need you to just hold me, take care of me, and guide me in those next steps. And I think I can remember days when it was minute to minute, man. I was like,
Yes.
I just need to get through this next minute. I need to make sure John can go to the bathroom. I need to make sure I can get him back in the, I mean, you are just, your focus, it becomes so clear and so narrow.
Yeah.
And I think that, Diane, illness is isolating and caregiving is also isolating because
Exactly.
together you're isolated in this space. It could be inside your own home where the rest of the world is going on.
Yes.
They got their own things, and yet you're just focused on how do I get him in and out of the bathroom?
Yes.
These are the things that we think about.
Exactly, exactly. And one of the things that caregivers do consistently is they allow their outside relationships to dry up and die. So there's nothing to go to after their caregiving journey. And I just tell people, tell my listeners, outside relationships are like a garden. You need water and sunshine. And if you're not watering and putting sunshine on towards those around you and maintaining those relationships, don't be surprised when people aren't there for you when this is over, because the average journey of caregiving is 5 years. Some are as long as 20, but the average is 5 years or 5.5 years. So that's a long time. People get on with their lives, and caregivers sometimes are shocked at the end of their journey when they say, who am I? Where am I? Why am I in this state? And where is everybody that I knew?
You know what? Which your background's gorgeous and explains your point beautifully. Because it wouldn't be much of a garden if there was only one flower in there, right? I mean,
Yep.
seriously,
Yep.
right? And as you're talking, I have a very good friend of mine who's going through this with her mom and her dad, who do not want to leave the family home that
Yeah.
their grandparents grew up in. And I'm listening to my girlfriend who comes from a large family. She's the only daughter, though.
Yeah.
And all the brothers are way too busy, not available. Oh, can't be bothered.
Yeah.
And she is shouldering all of it. And if I don't preach anything else, I'm like, girl, take care of yourself, take care of yourself. And I know your mom doesn't want a lift chair in there because it looks ugly, but guess what? At some point, how do you, and Diane, you might be able to speak to this because I'm like, there's a point, right? Do you just let the danger exist and hope nothing happens? Or, because you can't run interference 100% of the time either.
Well, one of the things I do is consistently with the primary caregiver, the spouse or the only daughter or the oldest daughter, whoever it is, they are dismissed, ignored. They're told that they are broken down by those around them, being judged. They're not doing things right. And everybody else is far too busy and important to stop to take care of the parents. And I also see the other side of that, where when the family member dies, they're like vultures coming to take the things out of the house. And I can't tell you how many caregivers, family caregivers that provided care for years, now are left homeless or with very little money and in poor health. So one of the things I do is I encourage every caregiver to create a family caregiver contract. And this way, because caregivers are terrible at setting boundaries. And so I encourage, it's called a personal care agreement, family caregiver contract, but I have it so that you decide what you can do and 101 questions you should ask, because you don't know if the family that you're taking, the person you're going to take care of, is going to become incontinent. You don't know if they're going to need personal care that you're not going to feel comfortable providing. You don't know if they're going to become abusive or sexually inappropriate. There are so many things that you don't know. They may develop wounds that you're expected to take care of, and you can't. It's not what you can't want to do. It's not that you're capable of doing. That stuff is being forced on the family caregiver. So you have to put a family caregiver contract in place. And because so many caregivers leave their jobs,
Yes.
if the family has money or they even have a home, I suggest that you take payment for your services. I know people think that's terrible. I
Yeah.
don't. It's absolutely necessary. Nobody's putting into your Social Security. Nobody's providing, going to take care of you when you get sick. So that is one of the first things I do is encourage a family caregiver contract. The other thing I am suggesting is you develop a caregiver relief support group and you expect family members to help. Now, here's the caveat because they don't want to help.
Right.
But what I say is if you cannot physically support, do research or take care of certain things or give me a break on a regular basis,
Yep.
because if you look at this as a job, you should have vacation, you should have time to be able to take care of your own needs and get 2 days a week off. Okay. I see where nobody wants to do this if but every family member that is involved and is not willing to help in any way, they should be financially supporting you so that you can have outside help come in to give you relief. So I'm being very firm about that. And we need to be now because it's not good for the family caregiver and they need to take accountability for their part in being part of a family member. And we've got away from community. We know if you were part of a community when you grew up, you didn't think anything of helping an elderly person. I spent a summer in my neighborhood going down the street a few houses down and sitting with this little old lady. She was so cute. And I was just 14 or 15. I sat and spent the day with her, made her lunch. We watched TV and we talked all day while her family members worked.
Yeah.
And they paid me,
Yeah.
as a babysitter. I don't remember, but I didn't mind doing it because I felt like I've always liked the elderly. And I had a great grandma. My grandma was wonderful. I had a good relationship. But there are things now that we have to, in order for us to sustain caregiving in the way that it needs to be done and maintain the dignity of the person we're providing care for, is people are going to have to step up to the plate. They need to provide transportation. You need someone to provide practical assistance, not hands-on. You can pay for hands-on, but the practical assistance is, hey, you do dad's yard then. Let's get the yard cut. Make
Yeah.
sure the dog gets to the walked every day or gets to the vet. There's all kinds of things. Make a meal for us. There are things that people can do to help and they don't. And we need to turn that around.
I agree wholeheartedly. And I think too, one of the things that I was constantly reminded of is, Rachel, you're the leader of the expedition. And if you go down, the whole expedition goes down. And
Yes.
I think too many times, if it's a woman heading the expedition, we, of course, as you said earlier, we're totally capable. But that
Yes.
doesn't mean that we've got the capacity and that
Yes.
that's the best thing we should do. And I'm fearful for my girlfriend because of course, she loves her parents, but
Yeah.
I'm looking at this going, wait a second. And my brother and I have an agreement. I think I told you, my parents live in Melbourne, Australia,
Yes.
and there are four of us in the family. But my brother and I have an agreement, and he knows that if something happens, which it did 2 years ago, my dad took a fall. He gave me 5 days. I got everything together and I got myself over there and I was there for 5 weeks. And what I found, Diane, my dad was in the hospital getting his hip fixed, doing his rehab. It was my mother that needed the care. It was my
Oh,
mother
yep.
who needed me to be there to be with her. He was fine in the hospital getting what he needed, but
Yes.
she was in worse shape than he was.
Yes. Yeah. I've seen that many times because when they're taking care of each other,
Yeah.
they neglect themselves. And of course, women usually baby their husbands. At least our generation did. I'm sorry,
Yes.
forgive me,
No,
but
no,
I'm
that's true, but it's
73.
yeah, no, it's absolutely when so,
Yeah,
yeah, I totally get it, and now my brother has said, "I'm not gonna put them in a home," and I'm like, "Okay, but
that's a
can."
bad thing to say.
It is, I think,
Yeah.
and I think we've got this idea too that all homes are bad, and I don't know where that came from. Well, I do, but I don't think it's necessarily true. Now, expensive, that might be true for
That's very
everybody.
true. And I can tell you, I worked in long-term care. I've been a regional manager over 2 national or international home nursing home companies, and there are good and there are bad nursing homes. But the difference between a good and a bad one is a good one, you are able to go in and you tell them what's wrong, what you need, and you always have to be in a presence in their life. You just don't put them in a home and say, "See you later." And that's the thing, you have to stay on top. And one of the things, again, I tell people is we are in it's a global
Yes.
crisis where there's not enough seniors or there's not enough youth to take care of our seniors. So I will tell you that it's not realistic to say, "I will never put you in a nursing home," because you don't know what you're agreeing to.
Yeah, I think and to your point, I'm just like and I had to get I have because I don't live there, I have to defer, but my brother knows too that I will get there as soon as I can. We've got 2 other siblings, they're out. They're not available, they're not at so
Yep,
fine.
yep,
So, but it is interesting to me how you're right. We say these things, and I was able to I mean, my husband and I, we talked about a lot of ALS patients, 85% of them get a feeding tube, but less than 10% do a trach. And
yep,
and let me tell you, once you get a trach, you know the level of care
yes,
changes dramatically.
dramatically. Yeah,
And for what we thought it would add,
yeah.
it wasn't a fair exchange. And so we did the feeding tube. We didn't do the trach though. And when you're talking about care, yeah, that's a game changer.
Well, and I will tell you, a feeding tube is not applicable in a lot of people that have them put in. And I want people to know that you go through a normal death and dying process. Your body consistent declines. And when you're unable to swallow and you're drooling, that's a sign your system is starting to shut down. And I know, especially, it's hard when you're dealing with somebody so young that you
Yes.
would put a feeding tube in. But I've seen people as they get old, there's so many issues with the feeding tube that can occur that I tell people you really need to look at what the options are because your family member is not going to die of starvation. Your
Right.
system shuts down in a very natural and graceful way, and you are not going to kill them by not feeding them, and that's really hard, especially hey, had an Italian husband, Lord have mercy, all the time. If that person
Right.
didn't eat, the world came to an end, and even with our animals, our greyhounds, it's just I know people have different feelings about cultures, but even the feeding tube, I think it takes you really have to look at all the issues that can happen and occur with the feeding tube that is interfering with the natural death and dying process. 'Cause
I agree.
yeah,
I agree. And I will tell you too, Diane, there was a term that was thrown out at me. It was the day that John died. Of course, I didn't know he was going to die that day, but the
yeah,
hospice nurse came in and said to me, okay, John is actively dying. He's in
yeah,
and I was like,
yeah,
what is that? I'd never heard
yeah,
of it. I was like, and I'm sitting here going, what is that? Is he going to like, is something going to blow up? Is he going to blow out?
yeah,
What
yeah,
does that mean?
yeah,
And so Jim, the nurse, explained it to me, and within 2 hours, John was gone.
yeah,
And yet, to your point, and then the whole conversation about hospice, we could probably
yeah,
spend another hour on how to
yeah,
utilize hospice and what hospice offers the caregiver, how
yeah.
hospice can support them. And why are people so hesitant to do that, Diane?
Well, there are Facebook pages that say hospice is killing my loved one,
Oh,
which
gee.
makes no sense because they would put themselves out of business.
Yeah.
It's just it's not for me, I see hospice as a way to be in control of what you want up until the moment of your last breath. I really like hospice. I love the benefits of it,
Yeah.
and they do have follow-up care for you up to 18 months after with bereavement counseling if you need it. And so I'm all for hospice, and one of the things that I have a hard time with is people doctors, because of financial reimbursement, this is always follow the money. They
Yep.
don't wanna refer to hospice early enough because their chunk of money will go away. That
Well, I will tell you that John's hospice orders were written in May. He died in September.
yeah, that was beautiful.
Yeah.
That was beautiful.
Yeah,
And
and maybe And this particular doctor, I mean, it was very hard to hear, right? John's not gonna
Uh-huh.
make it through the end of the year. He knew
Yeah,
that. He
yeah.
didn't know how long. And of course, my husband thought hospice was a morphine drip in a hospital bed over in a
Oh,
corner
God bless
somewhere,
them. Yeah.
But he was able to pass peacefully at home, which I'm ever so grateful for. But yeah, Diane, there's so much wrapped into this.
Yes.
And the thing is that I wish people would start talking about it before they got into the thick of it, right? Because
Well, we try to encourage that.
by the time you get into it, you can't make good decisions when you're running at an emotional peak, right? It's not the best way to operate.
Decisions made upon emotions are poor decision. They lack all logic, and it's sad. So, yeah. Rachel, you wore red to your husband's celebration of life. I love it. What did that symbolize, and what message do you want widows and caregivers to take from your story?
I do believe that life and death are worth celebrating, and I do believe it's one of our biggest privileges is to help somebody end well.
I
And
do too.
if you have the ability to honor their wishes, if they're of
Yeah,
sound mind
yeah,
when they make requests, if you can honor those wishes as best
yeah,
you can, and sometimes even if you can't, but you know in your heart you did everything you could, I think that is one of the greatest gifts that you will ever get. And I know that it is exhausting and I know that it can be thankless, but it is also your greatest act of love and
yeah.
service to another human being. So I want to encourage you wherever you may be in that journey. And I also, when it comes time to celebrate that life well lived, that's what you will focus on is what they brought into this world and the legacy that they have left with individuals within the family, within the community, within their friend group, and focus on that and let that be what you're celebrating rather than the way in which this person died. Although a good death, there is something to be said for that, many lessons to be learned. But I just want to lend you my confidence and tell you that this is not wasted. Whatever the experience is, it is not wasted. But information, I know when you feel like everything is out of control, information is power. So
Yeah.
get informed.
I love that, and I want you to know I'm from a big Irish family. We always celebrated life when somebody died, and I was always surprised when someone was going, "How awful are you? Why aren't you feeling sad?" "Hell, I'm sorry. I'm
Yeah.
sorry."
Not that
I'm
I
happy.
haven't felt. Yeah. It's not
Yes,
that you
yeah.
haven't felt sad.
Yes.
Yes.
So, Rachel, I really appreciate your time, and I hope we'll do this again. I wanna do all the trilogy with you. I would love that because
Okay.
you have so much experience and knowledge that is so important for us to share for the future caregivers out there. I really appreciate that. So thank you so much.
Diane, thank you. And the work that you're doing is so necessary and so needed. And I just pray that your
Thank you.
platform continues to grow and that people will continue to have these conversations well before they need them.
Yeah,
But it's not a one-time conversation. You have to keep coming back to it again and again and
absolutely.
again. Yeah.
Yes. To my family caregivers out there, you are the most important part of the caregiving equation. Without you, it all falls apart. So please learn to be gentle with yourself, practice self care every day because you are worth it.